Chapter 1 of The Lost Continent. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lucy LaFaro. The Lost Continent by Edgar Rice Burroughs. Chapter 1. Since earliest childhood, I have been strangely fascinated by the mystery surrounding the history of the last days of 20th century Europe. My interest is keenest, perhaps not so much in relation to known facts as to speculation upon the unknowable of the 2 centuries that have rolled by since human intercourse between the western and eastern hemispheres ceased, the mystery of Europe's state following the termination of the Great War, provided of course that the war had been terminated. From out of the meagreness of our censored histories we learned that for 15 years after the cessation of diplomatic relations between the United States of North America and the belligerent nations of the Old World, news of more or less doubtful authenticity filtered, from time to time, into the Western Hemisphere from the Eastern. Then came the fruition of that historic propaganda which is best described by its own slogan, "The East for the East, the West for the West," and all further intercourse was stopped by statute. Even prior to this, transoceanic commerce had practically ceased, owing to the perils and hazards of the mine-strewn waters of both the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Just when submarine activities ended, we do not know, but the last vessel of this type sighted by the Pan American merchantman was the huge Q-138, which discharged 29 torpedoes at a Brazilian tank steamer off the Bermudas in the fall of 1972. A heavy sea and the excellent seamanship of the master of the Brazilian permitted the Pan American to escape and report this last of a long series of outrages upon our commerce. God alone knows how many hundreds of our ancient ships fell prey to the roving steel sharks of blood-frenzied Europe. Countless were the vessels and men that passed over our eastern and western horizons, never to return. But whether they met their fates before the belching tubes of submarines, or among the aimlessly drifting minefields, no man lived to tell. And then came the great Pan-American Federation, which linked the Western Hemisphere from pole to pole under a single flag, which joined the navies of the New World into the mightiest fighting force that ever sailed the 7 seas, the greatest argument for peace the world had ever known. Since that day peace had reigned from the western shores of the Azores to the western shores of the Hawaiian Islands, nor has any man of either hemisphere dared cross 30 DW or 175 DW. From 30D to 175D is ours. From 30D to 175D is peace, prosperity, and happiness. Beyond was the great unknown. Even the geographies of my boyhood showed nothing beyond. We were taught of nothing beyond. Speculation was discouraged. For 200 years the Eastern Hemisphere had been wiped from the maps and histories of Pan America. Its mention in fiction even was forbidden. Our ships of peace patrol 30 and 175. What ships from beyond they have warned only the secret archives of government show. But, a naval officer myself, I have gathered from the traditions of the service that it has been fully 200 years since smoke or sail has been sighted east of 30D or west of 175D. The fate of the relinquished provinces which lay beyond the dead lines we could only speculate upon. That they were taken by the military power which rose so suddenly in China after the fall of the Republic, and which wrested Manchuria and Korea from Russia and Japan, and also absorbed the Philippines, is quite within the range of possibility. It was the commander of a Chinese man-of-war who received a copy of the Edict of 1972 from the hand of my illustrious ancestor, Admiral Turk, and 206 years ago, and from the yellowed pages of the Admiral's diary, I learned that the fate of the Philippines was even then presaged by these Chinese naval officers. Yes, for over 200 years no man crossed 30° to 175° and lived to tell his story. Not until chance drew me across and back again, and public opinion, revolting at last against the drastic regulations of our long-dead forebears, demanded that my story be given to the world, and that the narrow interdict, which commanded peace, prosperity, and happiness, to halt at 30° and 175° be removed forever. I am glad that it was given to me to be an instrument in the hands of Providence for the uplifting of benighted Europe and the amelioration of the suffering, degradation, and abysmal ignorance in which I found her. I shall not live to see the complete regeneration of the savage hordes of the Eastern Hemisphere. That is a work which will require many generations, perhaps ages, so complete has been their reversion to savagery. But I know that the work has been started, and I am proud of the share in it which my generous countrymen have placed in my hands. The government already possesses a complete official report of my adventures beyond 30. In the narrative I purpose telling my story in a less formal and, I hope, a more entertaining style. Though being only a naval officer, and without claim to the slightest literary ability, I shall most certainly fall far short of the possibilities which are inherent in my subject. That I have passed through the most wondrous adventures that have befallen a civilized man during the past 2 centuries encourages me in the belief that, however ill the telling, the facts themselves will command your interest to the final page. Beyond 30, romance, adventure, strange peoples, fearsome beasts, all the excitement and scurry of the lives of the 20th century ancients that have been denied us in these dull days of peace and prosaic prosperity. All lay beyond 30, the invisible barrier between the stupid commercial present and the carefree, barbarous past. What boy has not sighed for the good old days of wars, revolutions, and riots? How I used to pore over the chronicles of those old days, those dear old days, when workmen went armed to their labours, when they fell upon one another with gun and bomb and dagger, and the streets ran red with blood. Ah, but those were the times when life was worth the living, when a man who went out by night knew not at which dark corner a footpad might leap upon and slay him, when wild beasts roamed the forests and the jungles, and there were savage men and countries yet unexplored. Now, in all the Western Hemisphere dwells no man who may not find a schoolhouse within walking distance of his home, or at least within flying distance. The wildest beast that roams our waste places lairs in the frozen north or the frozen south within a government reserve, where the curious may view him and feed him bread crusts from the hand with perfect impunity. But beyond 30, and I have gone there and come back, and now